The game that started it all, the original Resident Evil. Not only did this game start off this massive franchise, but it also coined the term survival horror. Since the release, other games have been labelled with that term that came out before, like Sweet Home and Alone in the Dark, but Resident Evil defined what a survival horror game should be. Backtracking, puzzle solving, limited inventory, low resources, and fixed camera angles. Though games would evolve and we would see survival horror elements be adapted into other styles of play, like with a over-the-shoulder view. Let's get into why this game made such an impact on gaming, starting off with the development.
Just a moment! I found something.
What is it?
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things. Better take it with you.
But how about you, Barry?
I have this.
Thank you.
Capcom's goal originally was to remake a game called Sweet Home. Shinji Mikami would take the lead with development. They wanted to update the graphics and do things that weren't originally possible in the original Sweet Home, which they planned to do on the new PlayStation console. Turns out Capcom would no longer have the rights to the Sweet Home license while in development, so they had to come up with something else. Resident Evil would then be born, but in Japan the brand would be called Biohazard. The reason it wasn't called Biohazard in the West was because they were unable to get copyright for the name. One reason due to the fact that there was a New York-based punk band called Biohazard. So there you go. Resident Evil 7 would go to pick up the name Biohazard in the West years later. When developing RE, they adapted a lot of the elements in Sweet Home. Like for example, including the limited item inventory management, the mansion setting, the puzzles, the emphasis on survival, and the use of scattered notes and diary entries as storytelling mechanics. Sweet Home though played like a RPG. You would have a top-down view of the characters. RE was going to be first person originally. Mikami though would take inspiration from Alone in the Dark with its fixed camera angles, and so he would end up going with that style. Resident Evil would later play around with a first-person view in the game Resident Evil Survivor. With the fixed camera angles, they would also go with pre-rendered backgrounds, allowing for a lot of details in environments. Resident Evil would release 1996 with massive praise. Resident Evil would go to perfect survival gameplay, and we'll get into that when we talk about gameplay. The term survival horror was created once entering into the game, creating the legendary genre we love today.
You saved me!
Yeah.
Now in my previous video I mentioned I'm going through the series in a canon order. With that though, I want to chuck in the non-canon stuff too so I can basically review every official RE game as I go along. The original Resident Evil has technically become non-canon. Resident Evil 1 Remake was so good and faithful and also added so much to the lore that it ended up taking over. So much so, you only get the remake in the Resident Evil Archives 1 book, a book that goes in depth with lore. And later games would just use the remake lore to continue the story, with additions like Lisa Trevor, who we will see again in Rebirth for example. But that doesn't mean the original is pointless now. The game still has a lot of elements that are very unique to only this game, and we'll get into that. The story of RE1 is about STARS, the Special Tactics and Rescue Service. They are sent out to check on Bravo Team. Bravo Team went out to investigate murders taking place in the Arklay Mountains, but they never came back. Out goes STARS into the forest to investigate, giving this classic opening. This opening is perfect in every campy bad way. I love how they all just stand and stare at the helicopter leaving.
No! Don't go!
Now off a first watch, you'll definitely now find this opening pretty bad in terms of acting, and you'd be right. But it's definitely grown on me to the point that I actually enjoy this opening. I can see how this opening would have been cool back in the day. We got the cut version in black and white, but there is a coloured uncut version out there, and that's a lot better, showing some at times graphic content. Now, if you thought that opening was good, it gets better with a character showcase right after.
Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Rebecca Chambers, Albert Wesker, Resident Evil.
Where else could you get this kind of style in a game? With the campaign, you have the option of two characters, Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine. In Chris's, you'll bump into Rebecca from Bravo Team throughout, and in Jill's, you'll keep bumping into Barry. The side characters will add a uniqueness to both campaigns, making it a good idea to check out both. The side characters will help you out and add to story elements. Depending on what character you pick, the other will end up trapped in the mansion cell. You'll have the choice to save them. You'll make your way through the mansion solving puzzles to gain medallions that will open a door to the next area. Once in the next area, you will continue to solve puzzles to progress further. As you are making your way through each area, you'll get some information on what is happening, whether it's story elements or reading notes scattered throughout. There's some top tier notes in this game. The classic itchy tasty one, The Keeper's Diary, is a file written by an Umbrella researcher responsible for the Arklay Laboratories animals preparing for examination. You'll read as the man slowly turns into the undead. He wears a protective suit at some point until the higher-ups tell him that he doesn't have to use it anymore. He is excited that it's all good, but actually they told him that because they know he's infected. It's written in such a good way, making you feel uneasy. This file is so classic now that there's even a book on the history of Resident Evil named after it. Also, official and fan movies would use it. There'll be files like that in the game, and ones that give background on what the mansion is for, as well as Umbrella, the company behind the creation of these creatures we see. It turns out Wesker, the leader of STARS, and a character you see pop up a couple times in suspicious ways, is working for Umbrella. Umbrella and Wesker's goal was to get the STARS team into the mansion for combat data, to see how the creatures will go up against a trained team. In Jill's campaign, Wesker blackmailed Barry by threatening his family. You'll get suspicious of Barry when bumping into him multiple times. Both campaigns end on Wesker confronting you and wanting to show you the tyrant they've been working on. Barry at this point redeems himself by taking care of Wesker, and then you both go in to see the tyrant. Chris instead has such funny dialogue with Wesker when going in to see the tyrant.
This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant! Rick? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
The tyrant turns on Wesker in Chris's campaign and then goes after you.
Go to hell. Jill will join you too. What? Don't come this way! No!
You'll battle it and continue on, then a self-destruct sequence is activated and you will need to escape. At this point you can save your partner on your way out, as long as you get the codes to open a door beforehand.
This?
Jill, you're all right.
Yes. Wesker is here. He's...
Oh, I know. Anyway, let's get out of here.
At the helipad, coward Brad Vickers, the guy that left you behind beforehand, will come back to pick you guys up. But the tyrant is back. You have a final showdown with him, and then Brad hands you a rocket launcher to finish the job. In the campaign, there's multiple different endings depending on who you save. Characters can die depending on choices you make in the campaign, like letting Rebecca stay with you or not. In terms of a timeline with story, both campaigns are very different, but it's left up to you to think of how everyone got out of the mansion, because though you can finish a campaign and save everyone in it, the final cutscene will not show either Barry or Rebecca, though they did both live. Overall, I do enjoy the story of the original game. It's pretty simple compared to the remake, which can be nice to follow, and the dialogue has so much charm to it. I really do love some of the lines and delivery in this game. It really does bring a smile to my face at times. Yes, it's really bad at times, but I don't take it too seriously. Now let's get into the gameplay. Resident Evil 1996 is a pure survival horror experience. Backtracking, item management, low resources, and you'll fight against the infected. This game is one big puzzle. You control your character with tank controls and have fixed camera angles. The tank controls work really well with the camera since the character will continue to move straight even when the camera switches. You'll also freeze when you go to shoot, which will have you thinking if you need to move or just plant your feet. You start off in the mansion and your whole goal is to collect 4 medallions to open up a door into the next area. You have to collect keys and solve puzzles to get the medallions. Then you'll continue to do tasks to escape, but in small areas, some that you won't have to backtrack at all in. The mansion is one big area you will open up as you progress forward. It really feels good to have the mansion open up as you complete tasks. In terms of the characters you play, Jill's campaign is set up as an easy mode. You get 2 extra inventory slots. You can get the shotgun without the broken shotgun since Barry will help you, which is cool anyway since it'll give you this iconic line.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
You can also pick up a rocket launcher from Forest. You'll consistently pick up new weapons as you go through the campaign, but you will need to explore. Now, because Jill is the master of unlocking, you can access areas Chris would need a key for right away. As well as you can open drawers with items in them right away too, where Chris would need a small key. So yeah, Jill's campaign is a lot easier to go through. Once you are free to roam the mansion, you will start to get into a bit of a groove. You'll enter whatever doors are possible at first, and even find the safe rooms. Safe rooms have always been a big thing with Resident Evil, and it starts here. You enter and all your fears go away once you hear the song Save Room. This safe room is where you'll find the item boxes and typewriters. You have a limited supply of saves though, which adds to the tension, since you don't have an infinite amount and it's always a risk whenever you spend long periods of time without saving. The item boxes will allow you to storage all the items you don't want to carry, and both boxes connect. So once you put an item in the box, you can access it again at any other box. As you progress through the mansion, you will have plenty of T-virus zombies to go up against. If you are quick, you can run past a lot of them. The puzzle side of them is working out whether you want to waste your bullets on them or keep them for harder infected later on. That's the balancing act you got to do. You'll also bump into the Cerberus, giving us a classic jump scare. Once you leave the mansion, you'll get a mansion key in the dormitory. With that key, you'll be able to unlock more doors at the mansion, so you head back. But going back a second time, you'll face a tough new threat, the Hunter. These guys are real tough. They are quick and soak up a lot of bullets. There is a lot of them throughout the mansion now to keep things fresh and keep you on your toes. You get this fantastic cutscene introducing the hunters too. There's a bunch of these first person cutscenes and they are pretty cool. Later on in the laboratory, you'll face the chimeras. They are a real pain in the ass. They are very hard to hit since they jump on the roof a lot. They can attack you from the roof and are very fast on the ground. They do this grab attack which is so annoying too. They are horrible to go up against. So I just run for it. Throughout the game you will have multiple bosses. In the mansion you will fight against Yawn, which is a tough boss. You'll have to keep moving. The dormitory you will have Plant 42. The difficulty on this boss depends on if you get the V-Jolt, something you can use on the routes. With Chris's campaign you'll play Rebecca to do so. The plan is straightforward, you just keep moving and shoot. But really that goes for all the bosses. Same with the Black Tiger Spider. And finally with the Tyrant. Though, you can just run around until you get the rocket launcher to finish it off. Overall the gameplay is still very fun and rewarding. Even today the game is very satisfying to play. The way the mansion is designed just keeps on rewarding you and keeps things fresh. You'll really learn the layout by the end of the game, and I think that speaks volumes. This game has so much charm too with the characters and cutscenes, especially with Barry's epic lines throughout. The way this game perfectly balances all these survival elements is why the series would be classed as the king of survival horror, especially with later entries like Remake that will completely master the genre. This game is very dated, especially with Remake 1 out there, but I think it's still a pretty enjoyable game once you get your head around the controls and graphics. Personally for me though, I can click with both pretty easily.
Barry?
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this.
In terms of the way the game holds up with environments and sound, having the pre-rendered backgrounds keeps this game having a timeless look with environments. Of course it does all look dated, but I don't think it's too bad. Though of course the models in the game are very dated now. But I still thought they were alright, especially the hunter models and spiders. Each environment does have a unique flavour to it, especially the main hall. The camera angles that are placed throughout give these environments a lot of charm and keep you guessing when you hear a zombie around but you can't see it. I do find it interesting to play this original game after the remake. Since the remake is very dark, it has a real spooky mansion look to it, but the original game can be pretty bright with colours at times, which is interesting, because I feel like that can add to an uneasy feeling at times. The only area I found overall boring was the caves. They have no charm to them, just a lot of copy and paste. But that's the only area that I felt that way with. The labs have a real creep factor to it, especially with how clean it is. But what makes all these environments work so well is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this game is one of the reasons I love going back to it. It's so good and really adds to the atmosphere. Just listen to some of these creepy tracks. The sound design overall is still pretty good. The sounds of the zombies, the footsteps of the hunters, The soundscape really does still bring this game up, I think. Just don't play the DualShock version of the game, because if you do, you will get this whole new soundtrack that is really bad. Alright, now that we've gone through the game, let's quickly look at the different versions of Resident Evil. This game has been re-released a bunch. The versions I quickly want to highlight would be Deadly Silence, a exclusive DS version of RE1, which adds more threats and introduces new puzzles that use the hardware's unique features and characteristics. More importantly, having to blow into the microphone in order to perform CPR on the injured Richard. How cool is that? Also, what is cool is you have a first-person battle mode where you can use your knife to swipe away. You can also use your knife at any point like in RE4. This version is pretty cool, and if you have a DS, is a must for the system. The Saturn version of RE1 is interesting too. You have a bunch of different unique enemy types, like the Hunter Tick, basically a new skin with extra animations, a Golden Tyrant, which speaks for itself, and Zombie Wesker. Nice little Easter egg there. No matter what version of Resident Evil you play, it's always a good time. This game was designed in such a great way that it's still easy to enjoy today. Yeah, of course a lot of the look and movements are dated. It did come out in 1996 after all, but overall the gameplay is still solid. I still find this game a big joy to revisit just for the charm, survival horror elements and great soundtrack. With that, thank you very much for watching. If this video served to entertain, be sure to like, share and subscribe. Next up, let's take a look at the game that mastered survival horror, Resident Evil Remake.